My 30th birthday party was supposed to be the biggest celebration of my life. Instead, it became the most humiliating night I've ever endured. It all started when my neighbor, Karen, called the police on us. Little did she know, the responding officer was my estranged brother, Lucas. As the sirens blared and the flashing lights illuminated the backyard, I realized this was about to become the most twisted, heart-wrenching night of my life. The thumping music and laughter of my closest friends filled the air as I looked around my backyard, beaming with joy. This was the moment I had been planning for weeks. My 30th birthday bash was in full swing, and everyone I loved was here to celebrate with me. My girlfriend of 5 years, Emma, stood by my side, her radiant smile matching my own. "I can't believe this is happening," I said, pulling her in close. "I've never felt so complete." Emma squeezed my hand affectionately. "You deserve this, babe. After everything you've been through, it's time for a fresh start." I was about to lean in for a kiss when a loud voice suddenly pierced through the music. "Keep it deo moen outi there." We both turned to see my neighbor Karen, standing on her porch, her face twisted with rage. She stormed toward the fence separating our yards, her eyes narrowed to slits. "It's after 10 p.m. Don't you people have any respect for those of us trying to sleep?" I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Karen, I'm so sorry. We're just trying to have a small birthday celebration. I promise we'll keep the noise down." Her nostrils flared as she pointed an accusatory finger at me. "A birthday party? On a weeknight? How selfish can you be?" Before I could respond, she whirled around and marched back into her house, slamming the door behind her. Emma squeezed my hand, sensing the tension. "Don't let her ruin this for you," she whispered. "This is your night." I nodded, forcing a smile. But deep down, I had a sinking feeling that Karen wasn't done causing trouble. 20 minutes later, the unmistakable sound of police sirens pierced the air, growing louder with each passing second. My heart dropped as 2 squad cars pulled up in front of my house, their lights flashing. To my utter disbelief, the officer who stepped out of the first car was none other than my estranged brother, Lucas. "Oh my God," I breathed, feeling the color drain from my face. "This can't be happening." Lucas locked eyes with me, his expression unreadable. As he approached, I could see the conflict written all over his face. But before he could say a word, Karen emerged from her house, a smug grin plastered across her features. "Officer, thank goodness you're here," she said, her voice dripping with feigned concern. "These people have been disturbing the peace all night long. I've asked them to keep it down, but they refuse to listen." Lucas glanced over at me, his brow furrowed. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught in my throat. This was the last thing I ever expected to happen on my birthday. As Lucas turned to face Karen, I braced myself for the devastating confrontation that was about to unfold. The tension in the air was palpable as Lucas turned to face Karen, his expression hardening. I held my breath, anticipating the confrontation that was about to unfold. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to return to your home," Lucas said sternly. "These people are within their rights to have a birthday party as long as they keep the noise to a reasonable level." Karen's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, I thought she might actually back down. But then her features twisted into a malicious grin. "But officer, they've been completely disruptive all night long," she insisted. "Surely you can't condone this kind of behavior." Lucas glanced over at me, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. We hadn't spoken in years, not since the ugly fallout that had torn our family apart. But in that moment, I could see a flicker of the brother I once knew, the one who always had my back. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to return to your home," Lucas repeated, his voice low and firm. "If there are any further disturbances, I'll have no choice but to issue a citation." Karen's face flushed with anger, and for a moment, I thought she might try to argue further. But then, to my surprise, she simply turned on her heel and stalked back into her house, slamming the door behind her. The rest of my guests, who had been watching the exchange with bated breath, let out a collective sigh of relief. Emma wrapped her arms around me, and I felt the tension in my body start to melt away. But then, I caught Lucas's eye, and the familiar knot of unresolved emotions began to churn in the pit of my stomach. We stared at each other for a long moment, the weight of our shared history hanging heavy between us. "Thanks for—" I began, but the words caught in my throat. What could I say? That I was grateful he had come to my rescue, after all these years of silence. Lucas simply nodded, his expression unreadable. "Just try to keep it down, okay?" he said, before turning and heading back to his squad car. As I watched him go, I couldn't help but feel a sense of both relief and regret. Relief that the confrontation with Karen had been averted, but regret that the rift between my brother and I seemed as wide as ever. Emma squeezed my hand, sensing my inner turmoil. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I took a deep breath, forcing a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine," I lied. Let's just get back to the party. Okay." But as the music resumed and my guests started to dance, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was all just the calm before the storm. Something told me that Karen wasn't done causing trouble, and that the reappearance of my estranged brother was only the beginning of the chaos that was about to unfold. As the music resumed and my guests danced and laughed, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease wash over me. The confrontation with my neighbor Karen and the unexpected appearance of my estranged brother Lucas had left me on edge, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the night was far from over. I pulled Emma aside, my voice low. "I don't know, babe, something just feels off. I can't stop thinking about what Karen might do next." Emma squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Hey, don't worry. Lucas handled her. I'm sure she's not going to try anything else. Let's just focus on celebrating your birthday, okay?" I wanted to believe her, but the anxious knot in the pit of my stomach refused to loosen. As I scanned the backyard, I noticed a few of my guests glancing nervously towards Karen's house, their laughter more subdued. Suddenly, the sound of sirens pierced the air once more, and my heart sank. Not again, I thought, as the flashing lights drew closer. To my horror, 2 more squad cars pulled up in front of my house, and a group of officers spilled out, their faces stern. Emma's grip on my hand tightened. "What's happening?" she whispered, her voice laced with concern. Before I could respond, one of the officers approached me, his hand resting on the holster at his side. "Sir, we've received a report of a disturbance and possible illegal activity at this residence. I'm going to have to ask you and your guests to step outside." "What?" I sputtered, my mind racing. "But we haven't done anything wrong. The noise has been completely under control." The officer's expression remained impassive. "I'm sorry, sir, but we have to follow up on every call. If you could all step outside and provide some identification, we can get this sorted out quickly." My guests began to murmur anxiously, some of them already reaching for their wallets and purses. I caught sight of Lucas, who was now standing back with the other officers, his brow furrowed in what looked like concern. As I reluctantly led my friends outside, I couldn't help but glance over at Karen's house. To my dismay, I saw her peering out from behind her curtains, a satisfied smirk on her face. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that this was far from over. Karen was up to something, and I had a sinking feeling that she was about to unleash a whole new level of hell on my birthday celebration. As the officers began questioning my guests, I steeled myself for the battle that was surely about to unfold. Whatever happened next, I was determined to protect my friends and stand up to Karen's relentless campaign of harassment. This was my night, damn it, and I wasn't going to let her ruin it without a fight. As the officers began questioning my guests, I felt a growing sense of dread and frustration. This was supposed to be my night to celebrate, surrounded by the people I loved. And now, we were all being treated like suspects. I glanced over at Lucas, who was standing off to the side, his expression unreadable. Part of me wanted to march over and demand an explanation, but the rift between us ran too deep. Instead, I turned my attention to the lead officer, who was now approaching me with a stern look on his face. "Sir, we've received multiple reports of underage drinking and illegal drug use coming from this property," he stated, his voice authoritative. "I'm going to need you to cooperate fully with our investigation." My heart raced as I shook my head vehemently. That's absolutely not true. We've been nothing but respectful and responsible here. This is just a small birthday party for me and my friends. The officer's gaze hardened. "Well, the calls we've received tell a different story. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to conduct a search of the premises." Before I could protest, the officer motioned to his colleagues, and they began fanning out across the backyard, scrutinizing every inch of the space. I watched helplessly as they rifled through coolers, peered under tables, and questioned my guests one by one. Emma moved to my side, her eyes wide with fear. "What's going on? Why are they doing this?" I pulled her close, my voice low and trembling. "It's Karen. She's behind all of this. I just know it. She's trying to ruin my birthday party." Emma's brow furrowed in confusion. "But why? What could she possibly have against you?" I shook my head, my mind racing. "I don't know, but she's been hell-bent on making my life miserable ever since I moved in. And now," I gestured helplessly at the scene unfolding around us. As the officers continued their invasive search, I noticed Lucas hanging back, his expression seemingly torn. I locked eyes with him, silently pleading for him to intervene, to put a stop to this madness. But he simply stood there, his lips pressed into a thin line. The lead officer suddenly reappeared, a triumphant gleam in his eye. "All right, folks, it seems we found some evidence of illegal activity here. I'm going to have to ask you all to come down to the station for further questioning." My blood ran cold as I watched my friends being herded towards the squad cars, their faces etched with fear and confusion. Emma clung to my arm, her voice trembling. "What's going to happen to us?" I swallowed hard, my mind spinning. "I don't know, but I'm not going to let them take you or anyone else. This is all Karen's doing, and I'm going to make sure she pays for it." With a newfound determination, I turned to face the lead officer, my chin raised defiantly. "You're not taking my guests anywhere. This is my property, and I demand that you leave. Now." The officer's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought he might try to argue. But then, to my surprise, he simply nodded and gestured to his colleagues. "All right, let's pack it up. These people are free to go." As the officers retreated, I caught a glimpse of Karen, peeking out from behind her curtains once more. Her face was twisted with rage, and I knew in that moment that this was far from over. The war had only just begun. As the officers retreated, my guests slowly began to gather their belongings, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. Emma wrapped her arms around me, her body trembling. "I can't believe that just happened," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "What is wrong with that woman?" I pulled her close, my mind racing. "I don't know, but I'm not going to let her get away with this. This is my birthday, damn it, and she's not going to ruin it." I glanced over at Lucas, who was standing a few feet away, his expression unreadable. A part of me wanted to confront him, to demand an explanation for his inaction, but the rift between us felt too wide to bridge, even in the midst of this chaos. "Thanks for, not letting them take us in," I said, my voice laced with a touch of bitterness. Lucas nodded, his gaze fixed on the ground. I couldn't let that happen. Not to you or your friends." I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, a shrill voice cut through the air. "This isn't over, you know." We all turned to see Karen storming towards us, her face twisted with rage. She jabbed a finger in my direction, her eyes narrowed to slits. You and your little party are an absolute disgrace to this neighborhood. I won't rest until I've put a stop to this nonsense once and for all." I felt the anger boiling up inside me, and I took a step forward, my fists clenched. "This is my property, Karen, and I have every right to celebrate my birthday however I choose. You had no right to call the cops and make up those ridiculous lies about underage drinking and drugs." Karen let out a shrill, mocking laugh. "Lies? Oh, you poor, deluded fool. I have evidence, you know. Proof that you and your friends are nothing but a bunch of lawless, entitled brats." I felt the blood drain from my face as she pulled out her phone, her fingers tapping furiously. "Just wait until the authorities see the footage I've captured. They'll have no choice but to shut this whole thing down for good." Emma tightened her grip on my arm, her voice trembling. "What footage? What is she talking about?" Before I could respond, Karen let out a triumphant cackle. "Ah, here it is. Say goodbye to your little party, you pathetic excuse for a neighbor." She thrust her phone towards us, and my heart sank as I saw the grainy, but unmistakable, image of one of my guests passing a joint to another. I clenched my jaw, my mind racing with panic and fury. "This is a setup, can't you see that?" I shouted, my voice laced with desperation. "Karen's been out to get me from the moment I moved in, and now she's stooping to this level of deception to ruin my life." Karen's eyes gleamed with malicious glee. "Deception? Oh no, my dear. This is the cold, hard truth. And trust me, the police are going to love it." She turned on her heel, already dialing a number on her phone. "Enjoy the rest of your party, because it's going to be your last. I'm calling them right now." As Karen disappeared back into her house, the backyard fell silent, save for the sound of my guests murmuring nervously. Emma turned to me, her eyes filled with fear. "What are we going to do?" she whispered. I looked around at my friends, their faces etched with worry, and then I glanced over at Lucas, who was watching the scene unfold with a conflicted expression. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. "We're not going to let her win," I said, my voice steady and determined. "We're going to fight this, no matter what it takes." With that, I strode towards the house, my mind racing with 1,000 different plans, all focused on one goal: taking down Karen and her twisted scheme once and for all. As I marched towards the house, my mind raced with 12 different plans of attack. Karen had gone too far this time, and I was determined to put a stop to her relentless campaign of harassment once and for all. I burst through the door, startling my friends who had gathered inside, their faces etched with worry. Emma rushed to my side, her eyes wide with concern. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "I'm going to confront Karen, show her that we have evidence of her own deceitful behavior. And then I'm going to call the cops and make sure she gets exactly what she deserves." Emma nodded, her expression resolute. "I'm with you, every step of the way." I turned to the rest of my guests, my voice firm and commanding. "All right, everyone, I need your help. We're going to fight fire with fire, and show Karen that she's messed with the wrong group of people." One by one, my friends stepped forward, their faces alight with determination. Within minutes, we had a plan in place. A carefully coordinated counterattack that would hopefully expose Karen's lies and put an end to her relentless harassment. As we made our way back outside, I spotted Lucas standing off to the side, his expression unreadable. I hesitated for a moment, then decided to approach him. "Look, I know things have been complicated between us," I said, my voice low. "But I could really use your help right now. Karen's gone too far, and I need to make sure she pays for what she's done." Lucas held my gaze for a long moment, the weight of our shared history hanging heavy in the air. Then, to my surprise, he nodded. "What do you need me to do?" I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope as I outlined the plan, and Lucas listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. Maybe, just maybe, this was the first step towards healing the rift that had torn our family apart all those years ago. With Lucas on board, we set our plan in motion, fanning out across the backyard and systematically gathering the evidence we needed to expose Karen's lies. As we worked, I couldn't help but feel a surge of adrenaline. This was it, our chance to finally fight back against the woman who had made our lives a living hell. When we were ready, I took a deep breath and approached Karen's front door, my friends flanking me on either side. This was it, the moment of truth. I raised my hand and knocked, my heart pounding in my chest. The door swung open, and there stood Karen, a triumphant grin plastered across her face. But that grin quickly faded as she took in the sight of us, our expressions resolute and our evidence in hand. "What is the meaning of this?" she sputtered, her voice laced with panic. I stepped forward, my voice steady and unwavering. "Karen, we have some evidence we'd like to share with you. Evidence that paints a very different picture than the one you've been trying to sell to the police." Her eyes widened, and I knew in that moment that we had her right where we wanted her. This was our chance to turn the tables and show her that she had finally met her match. As I launched into our carefully crafted counterattack, I couldn't help but feel a sense of exhilaration. This was our moment, our chance to reclaim the night and emerge victorious. And with Lucas by my side, I knew that we were more than ready to take Karen down, once and for all. As I stood on Karen's doorstep, surrounded by my friends and with my estranged brother Lucas at my side, I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was our moment to strike back, to expose the truth, and show Karen that her twisted scheme had finally been unraveled. "What is the meaning of this?" Karen sputtered, her eyes darting nervously between the group of us. I stepped forward, my voice steady and unwavering. "Karen, we have some evidence we'd like to share with you. Evidence that paints a very different picture than the one you've been trying to sell to the police." I could see the panic flashing across her face as I pulled out my phone and began scrolling through the footage we had meticulously gathered. Emma, bless her heart, had been diligently recording the entire party, capturing every interaction and every moment of laughter and camaraderie. "As you can see here," I said, holding the phone up for Karen to see, "there's no underage drinking or drug use happening at my party. In fact, it's just a group of friends enjoying a birthday celebration, just as any reasonable person would expect." Karen's eyes narrowed to slits as she watched the footage, her lips pressed into a thin, angry line. I could almost see the gears turning in her head, desperately trying to find a way to discredit our evidence. "That footage is clearly doctored," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You're just trying to cover up your own misdeeds." I shook my head, a grim smile spreading across my face. "Oh, but that's not all we have. You see, we've also got footage of you, Karen, making that call to the police earlier tonight. And let me tell you, the look on your face when you realized that the responding officer was my own brother, Lucas. Priceless." At the mention of his name, Lucas stepped forward, his expression hardening. "That's right, Karen. I was there, and I saw the whole thing. Your little scheme to get my brother in trouble, it didn't work. In fact, it's only made things worse for you." Karen's face turned beet red, and for a moment, I thought she might try to lunge at us. But then, to my surprise, she let out a defeated sigh and stepped aside, gesturing for us to enter her home. "All right, fine," she muttered, her voice laced with resignation. "You win. I'll admit it. I was the one who called the cops, and I even tried to plant that phony evidence. But I was just so sick of the noise and the chaos, and I thought that if I could get you in trouble, maybe you'd finally learn your lesson." I shook my head, my heart pounding with a mix of relief and righteous fury. "Well, you were wrong, Karen. This is my birthday, and I'll celebrate it however I damn well please. And if you ever try to pull a stunt like this again, I can assure you that the consequences will be far more severe." With that, I turned on my heel and headed back towards the backyard, my friends and Lucas trailing behind me. As we walked, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. We had won this battle, and it was all thanks to the unwavering support of the people I loved. But as I looked up at the night sky, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Karen was a formidable foe, and I knew that she wouldn't give up so easily. We had won this round, but the war was far from over. As I walked back to the backyard, surrounded by my friends and with my estranged brother Lucas by my side, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief and satisfaction. We had emerged victorious in our confrontation with Karen, exposing her twisted scheme and putting an end to her relentless campaign of harassment. But even as the adrenaline began to subside, I couldn't shake the lingering unease that had been gnawing at me all night. This wasn't over. I knew that deep down. Karen was not the type of person to simply back down and admit defeat. She was vindictive, calculating, and I had a sinking feeling that she was already plotting her next move. As I rejoined the group, Emma rushed to my side, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and concern. "You did it. I can't believe we actually managed to turn the tables on that woman," she exclaimed, squeezing my hand tightly. I nodded, mustering a weary smile. "Yeah, but I can't shake the feeling that this is just the calm before the storm. Karen's not going to let this go easily." Emma's expression darkened, and she opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, the sound of sirens once again pierced the air. My heart sank as I watched the flashing lights draw closer, and a feeling of dread began to settle in the pit of my stomach. "Not again," I muttered, bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation. But to my surprise, it wasn't the police who emerged from the squad cars. It was a team of paramedics, their faces etched with concern. They rushed towards the house, and I felt a surge of panic as I realized that the target of their attention was none other than Karen herself. "What happened?" I asked, my voice trembling. One of the paramedics approached me, his expression grave. "Ma'am, we received a call about a medical emergency. It seems your neighbor collapsed and is unresponsive. We need to get her to the hospital immediately." I felt a wave of conflicting emotions wash over me: relief, confusion, and a small twinge of guilt. Despite everything that Karen had put us through, the thought of her lying unconscious and in need of medical attention was unsettling. As the paramedics carefully loaded Karen into the ambulance, I watched from the sidelines, my mind racing. Had she suffered a heart attack? Was this all just another one of her schemes, designed to garner sympathy and turn the tables on us once again? I turned to Lucas, who had been standing silently by my side throughout the entire ordeal. "Do you think this was an accident, or—" He held up a hand, cutting me off. "I don't know, but it's not our place to speculate. What matters now is that she gets the care she needs." I nodded, feeling a newfound respect for my brother's composure and wisdom. Perhaps this was the start of a long overdue reconciliation between us, a chance to finally heal the wounds that had torn our family apart all those years ago. As the ambulance sped away, the backyard fell silent, save for the gentle hum of the music that was still playing in the background. My guests tentatively began to resume their celebration, their laughter and chatter more subdued than before. But as I looked around at the faces of the people I loved, I couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude and pride. We had weathered the storm together, united in our determination to defend our right to simply enjoy a birthday party in peace. And as I pulled Emma close, her arms wrapping around me in a comforting embrace, I knew that no matter what the future held, I would always have the unwavering support of those who truly mattered. Karen's reign of terror may have been temporarily disrupted, but the real victory was in the bonds of friendship and family that had been forged in the face of adversity. With a deep breath, I turned my attention back to the party, ready to embrace the rest of the night with open arms. After all, this was my birthday, and no amount of Karen-induced drama was going to stop me from celebrating.